Good evening, Good evening, Council. I'm Heather Davis, Project Planner, and I'm here with Kathleen Mallory, Planning and Sustainability Manager with the City of Oxnard. Also on the team and available to answer questions at the meeting is George Dix with Rincon Consultants and John Mugridge with Fair and Pierce Transportation Consulting. I'm presenting the update to the City of Oxnard, California. The California Environmental Quality Act threshold guidelines. The California Environmental Quality Act is otherwise known as CEQA. This slide provides a brief background on the city's CEQA threshold guidelines and an overview of updates. The city's CEQA threshold guidelines implement and supplement the state CEQA statute and guidelines to provide guidance to staff, consultants, and the development community in preparing environmental documents for development projects within the city. The city's guidelines were last updated in 2017. The intent of this update is to align the city's CEQA threshold guidelines with the updates to the state CEQA statutes and guidelines and provide background policies and methodology specific to Oxnard. The environmental topics within the city's threshold guidelines correlate with the 19 environmental topic areas in Appendix G of the state CEQA statutes and guideline. Most of the updates to the topic areas are minor in nature and brought about for consistency with the state CEQA statutes, and reorganization to align with state document structure, or encompass negligible textual revisions to a threshold question. There are 4 key changes to topic areas under the CEQA guidelines. These include energy, greenhouse gas emissions, wildfire, and transportation. Most of these topics were addressed in the city's 2017 CEQA threshold guidelines, but have now been reorganized into standalone sections, have revisions to checklist questions, or in the case of transportation, require analysis for vehicle miles traveled, otherwise known as VMT, rather than level of service. I'll go over these 4 topic areas further in the next few slides. Another key change is incorporation of updates to the state CEQA thresholds of significance, and then adding new and specific methodologies to use for analysis of environmental impacts. Next slide. Energy is a new section in the 2024 state CEQA initial study checklist that the city evaluates under the utilities section of the city's 2017 CEQA threshold guidelines. This section evaluates potential energy consumption and conservation of proposed projects with particular emphasis on avoiding or reducing inefficient, wasteful, or unnecessary consumption of energy and assuring consistency with the city's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, also known as CAP, which was approved by Council in 2022. Another key update to the city's CEQA guidelines is greenhouse gas emissions, otherwise known as GHG. This section was titled Climate Change and Greenhouse Gas Emissions in the city's 2017 CEQA threshold guidelines and is being updated to be consistent with the 2024 state CEQA checklist and the methods for evaluating impacts. Under this section, the city evaluates projects for consistency with the key project attributes that reduce GHG from the California Air Resource Board scoping plan, which aligns with the state's climate goals to determine if a project has a less than significant impact from GHG emissions. Wildfire is also a new section in the city's CEQA threshold guidelines to be consistent with the 2024 state CEQA checklist, along with the checklist. Fire hazards were formally addressed under the Hazards and Hazardous Materials section of the city's initial study checklist form. As shown on the CAL FIRE map, the city is not located in a very high fire hazard severity zone and therefore may rarely identify a project with potentially significant wildfire impacts. Nevertheless, recent years have shown wildfire risk in urban areas to be increasing. Additionally, surrounding communities, including undeveloped hillside areas north and east of the city, are within moderate, high, or very high fire hazard severity zones. Therefore, wildfire has been added as a standalone section in the city's CEQA threshold guidelines. The most notable change to the threshold guidelines is an update to the thresholds and methodologies used to determine transportation and circulation environmental impacts. Senate Bill 743 required agencies to change the way transportation impact studies are conducted in CEQA documents. Under Senate Bill 743, lead agencies are required to assess changes in vehicle miles traveled rather than motorist delays and level of service as the metric for CEQA impact determination. VMT is defined as the product of the number of daily trips generated by a new development and the distance those trips travel to their destination. Senate Bill 743 does not prevent a city from continuing to analyze level of service as part of the development review, general plan conformance, or ongoing network monitoring, but level of service will no longer constitute the basis for assessing CEQA impacts. The city's CEQA threshold guidelines reflect a methodology for assessing VMT transportation impacts for development within the city, consistent with the recommendation from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. This includes screening criteria to determine if a project will need further VMT analysis. Such screening criteria include, for example, project size to screen out small projects, if a project provides affordable housing, or if a project is located in a low VMT area. These two maps reflect the residential low VMT areas in blue and the employment low VMT areas in blue on the right. The methodology includes travel demand forecasting modeling based on the Ventura County Transportation Model to estimate VMT and generate screening maps that may be used to determine if a project is in a low VMT area. Projects located in a low VMT area are generally presumed to have a less than significant impact on VMT and may be screened from requiring further VMT analysis. Notably, only VMT methodology is being adopted, not the screening maps, which will be updated annually to reflect current data. On October 2017, the Planning Commission held a study session on the CEQA threshold guidelines. At the study session, the Planning Commission listened to a consultant presentation and took part in an interactive discussion with staff regarding the CEQA guidelines. On November 7th, the Planning Commission unanimously adopted a resolution recommending that the City Council repeal Resolution 15040 and approve the updated CEQA threshold guidelines. At both meetings, no members of the public provided written or oral comment regarding these agenda items. At this time, staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolution repealing Resolution 15040 and approving the updated CEQA threshold guidelines, and find that the 2024 CEQA threshold guidelines are exempt from CEQA under the guidelines section 15061B3. Thank you.